data in and time counts, and 60 left the wider countryside survey. Now you might be thinking yourselves, wonder what the answers are. And I was thinking with all this technology we might be able to do like a family fortunes where you could vote for your answers ahead of me revealing them, but maybe next year. Katie and Andrew, if you can organise that. Okay, so why do people stop the scheme? Starting with the bottom answers. So it was good to hear that nobody stopped because it wasn't relevant to them anymore, or they saw it as a one-off activity. So we're obviously saying the right things to recorders to get them to take part. They don't see it as a one-off thing. That's slightly disappointing, the fact that there was no sort of turnover in sort of students. I think ideally we would like some students coming in and out of the scheme temporarily, getting experience, then moving on. We can use that data these days, the way we analyse the data, but it just shows really that we're not getting much involvement in sort of, universities and things in the scheme. That's fair enough. Some people have done their time. Sounds like prison, doesn't it? That's encouraging to know that people didn't think the scheme was too bureaucratic, so that was good. A couple thought it was badly organised, but again, in the grand scheme of things, not too many. That's a little bit disappointing. People thinking that their efforts weren't appreciated. I mean, we'd like that to be zero. It was only a couple of people, but that's two more than we'd like, really. That's fair enough. People wanted to do other things, so that's understandable. Moving away, that's fair enough as well. There's quite a number of people moved away from the scheme. This is the first negative one, really. 12 people thought the data entry was too onerous to the point of leaving the scheme. So that was, we need to work on that one. This is a bit sort of an unfortunate reality, really, that, we all reach our age when it gets too much for us. And apart from Jim, and this was quite a curious answer. This is the top answer, and 32 respondents thought it was taking up too much time. And the surprising thing that was more for people who are involved in the wider countryside, which was like 2 visits compared to up to 26 in a Transect. So that was quite a curious result, really. So the next question was, okay, you've stopped. Would you be prepared to come back and take part again? And really encouragingly, particularly for the wider countryside as well, that over half the people who stopped said they would come back again and do the scheme in another year. So there's a lot of potential there to bring people back even if they've left. So the final question was for those who took part but didn't send the data in. So what were the reasons for that? So just very small number, human error, a lot of it. I forgot, I didn't know what the deadline was. Somebody else lost the data. You're going to get this in a scheme this big with over 2,000 sites, 2,500 people involved. You're going to get natural human error. A bit disappointing that 3 people lost interest in the scheme and too busy to submit the data. That was a worry as well. But again, the online system, 13 respondents, this is the main reason, had problems using the online system. Okay, so just to summarise that then, I think it really did show that having deadlines to get this data in, quite tight deadlines, it's just not a problem either for people who are submitting data or for those who leave as well. So there's, we've got a green light to get these deadlines, annual deadlines in for all data. We need to keep improving the online system and helping people to use it. especially those who are not that au fait with modern technology. And we've still got a job to sell the wider countryside survey for all those people who sort of are interested in it but are either dropping out or still can't quite see the value of it. So we've got a job to do there. Okay, moving on to a bit more news then, away from coverage. And this year, we promised this, it's a deliverable in our project and a condition of the funding. We've got to move fully to the online system this year. In spite of its few teething troubles, it is a fantastic system. So we're switching off Transect Walker. And when it first came out, Transect Walker, it was on a floppy disk. This is how old it is. We've got to make progress, move on. These are the sort of computers you had in those days when Transect Walker was launched. You had these, remember these phones like this with a like walkie-talkie on? And perhaps that was me then as well. So yeah, let's move on. We've got to switch it off this year. Sorry, Ken, and a few others are still using it, but we need to move completely to online to make everybody's life easier. Okay, it's been another good year for the data being used in research. So just a number of publications covering climate change, a study led by James Bell of Rothamsted. That's just came out last couple of weeks, and we're doing a press release on it this week, so it should be in the media again. Sam Ellis of BC produced one on the high brown and why it's not responding to management as well as we'd like in northwest England. Our own Ian Middlebrook has worked with Roger Dennis, on the greyling on the Great Orme, published in the Journal of Insect Conservation, on the ecology of the butterfly up there, the unique ecology on the Great Orme. Fiona Burns, who's leading on the analysis for the State of Nature reports, produced a methods paper on that. And Richard Fox, another methods paper on the sort of red list criteria, these 10-year trends and how they're very sensitive to what time period you select and how that could be improved. And finally, Samantha Franks of the BTO has done another fascinating paper on climate change. And as Jim mentioned, we have a science newsletter now, and you can read about these studies in the course of time in that newsletter and ask us for any copies of them. We'll be happy to send them to you. Okay, just to finish off, to tell you about this exciting new use of the UK BMS data, a new European project called ABLE. And it combines the UK BMS data with all the other available monitoring scheme data across Europe. And we can see in the plot here, it's 11 schemes, nearly 4 million records. You can see here we started it off and the Dutch joined in 1990, and then it's just grown and grown since then. And there's a lot of potential to use this data to inform European-wide policies. So the team involved in this, primarily David Roy on the data. Time's not been kind to you, David, either, has it, as well as me. Have you got your name badge, David? No, sorry. Yeah, David's sort of leading on the data management side, bringing this fantastic new online system, data entry platform for all the European schemes, supporting that. And we have Emily Dennis at BC, who's going to be heavily involved in developing the biodiversity indicators. So that will lead to... so you can see here, this is the existing monitoring in Europe, very biased towards the north and west. But the plan is to get some of these Central and East European countries who are very interested into the scheme. The target is to bring at least 6 new countries in over the next 2 years and help some of the fledgling schemes as well, here in blue, in Portugal, Spain, etc. Okay, so what we're trying to achieve with this project is to get new biodiversity indicators and better indicators that better reflect the uncertainty in the data. So improve the grassland indicator and new indicators for European woodlands, wetlands, urban areas, and a new climate change indicator as well. And so it's quite a short turnaround on this project, so hoping this will come in the next couple of years. Okay, thank you for your attention, and let's hope we have another great summer and see lots of butterflies, and just to say thank you for all your incredible achievements that help the scheme to continue to grow. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom, for your sound effects and your talk. We're now going to hear from Zoe Randall about one of the schemes within the UK BMS, the wider countryside scheme, and Zoe's going to bring us up to date on that.
Getting me wired for sound.
Yeah.
The camera.
This one.
That's the one for the.
Yeah.
One there with the camera. That's the camera.
Feel like a terrorist. I've got all these gadgets strapped to me. I'm just going to press the button. Are you ready? Do you think you've done enough and contributed? So, okay, stopwatch, ready, steady, go. Hi there, so I'm Zoe Randall, and I coordinate the wider countryside butterfly survey, the scheme that, according to two people, is badly organised. Well, I tell you what, it is a really, really hard sell, though. People don't just want to go out twice a year. They don't want to have to deal with landowners and approach landowners and ask for permission to go onto private land. But in my experience, landowners are always really happy to help. They'll even help you set up a route because they'll look on your map and they'll show you where the gateways are. So you can make a really nice route through, through your 1 kilometre square. You get off the beaten track. You can go to some amazing places. I'm going to show you some photos in a minute. And like Lorraine was saying earlier about this chap walking his dog going, what you do? Why are you counting butterflies here? There aren't any. It's like, well, that is just as important. A nil return is just as important as seeing 6,000 Meadow Browns and 59 million silver-studded blues. So I'm going to really try and sell it to you. And I want bums on seats and names on paper by the end of today, please. So, there we are. This is the lovely English countryside. Nicely divided. Quite a few nice trees up there, actually. That would probably be quite a good wider countryside square. So, the wider countryside butterfly survey. It's a partnership. Well, it's part of the UK butterfly monitoring scheme. It complements the traditional Transects scheme really well. The sites are random 1 kilometre squares, which enables us to target generally under-recorded areas such as farmland and the uplands. So you are not going to be surveying butterflies in triple SIs and on national nature reserves and in traditional butterfly hotspots. You're going out into the, out into the butterfly wilderness, shall we say. So it's a partnership between BTO and the Centre for Ecology and Hydrology and BC, and it's funded by JNCC. So the survey methodology, it's broadly based on the BTO's breeding bird survey methodology, where you've got a random 1 kilometre square. There we are, all of these dots on this map. Is there a pointer? Yeah. All these dots on this map up here. Pink ones are BC, blue ones are BTO. And each one of these is a random 1 kilometre square. So if we zoom into that, we've got our 1k square here. And what you generally do is you set up two 1 kilometre long survey lines which run north, south or east, west. However, This would be all right in the uplands or somewhere like that, but in the general countryside, that's a little bit impractical because you've got things like barbed wire fences and hedges and streams and rivers and such like in the way. So that is basically what it'll end up in the real world looking like. So you've got your two 1K length survey lines. Each one's divided into 5 sections, which are 200 metres long each. Again, that's a massive difference to the traditional transects, where you basically have a section which is determined, the length of which is determined by the habitat. It's not the same with wider countryside. 200 metres, please. No more, no less. Never mind that is oilseed rape and then that's a meadow. We want 200 metres. Please read the instructions. So that's what we generally tend to have. And when do you do it? Well, as Tom was saying earlier, it's reduced effort. You don't have to drag yourself out every week of the year from April till the end of September, 26 weeks of the year. No, twice a year is good. Once in July, once in August, 2 visits, at least 10 days apart. But you can, because that coincides with the peak flight period of our wider countryside butterfly survey species. And then you can do 2 optional visits. You can do a spring visit or 2 to count orange tips and green hair streaks, and then you could do another couple of visits later on in the year, because 2 visits, or it's still not really enough. If you want to get out there, you want to get your butterfly hit, and get out and do a few more. So reduced effort. Oh, and the time of day as well. You can start a bit earlier and finish a bit later as well. So again, it's great for busy people. Really, really great for busy people, because you don't need to commit as much as you do to a traditional transect. So here are the coverage results for 2018. It was the best year in terms of number of squares covered in 2018 since 2013, when we had 857 squares done back then. But this year we had 790 done. As I said, we collaborate with the BTO's Breeding Bird Survey volunteers. In the summer, they've got nothing to do. There aren't any birds really to count, so they come out and count butterflies on their BBS squares instead. So this year, 520 squares done by BC, 270 BBS squares, and you can see that we're, over the years, it's reasonably stable. But we would like to get more and more people involved. So, and this map here just shows where the squares were done. I've had to cut off Shetland and Orkney because no squares were done up there, but there are squares to be done, and I've got volunteers lined up for this year. So we had 65 new squares taken on this year, 40 by BC volunteers and 25 BBS squares, and this just shows the distribution of them. The majority, 7 new ones in Wiltshire. Yay! Wiltshire, oh yeah, well, Wiltshire's going to get fanfare in a minute. I haven't got any clapping on the video though, but so Wiltshire, Gloucestershire, Dorset, and they were so southwest area were places where the majority of new squares were taken on. So 7 for Wiltshire, 6 for Gloucester, and 5 for Dorset, and then a smattering in other places. So let's have a look at branch breakdown. There's nothing like a bit of branch rivalry, is there? It's fantastic. Come on. So the top 3 branches in terms of coverage, so this is BC squares and BBS squares, was Dorset with 61 squares. Woohoo! And then we had Gloucester with 49. Woohoo! Beds and North Hants, 48. Yay! And then the most improved branches, because Wiltshire, to be fair, Wiltshire's just been skipping along really gently with not much happening really, but Janet Crittenden's come on board. She's done an amazing job, and last year we had an additional 11 squares done in Wiltshire. And I think that's cranked, can't remember what the top total is for Wiltshire, but it's the best that Wiltshire's, I think, ever done. So fantastic, great job guys, brilliant. And Somerset and Bristol did an extra 8 squares last year as well, so that's really good. So, when we look at BC only squares, let's forget about the bird people for now, because we're here for butterflies. You can see this is the distribution of squares that have been covered, and you can see there's quite a few gaps in recording. So Highland, and Glasgow and South West Scotland branch, there we are, Yorkshire, Lincolnshire. Not a lot going on there, is there? I think there's only about 2 squares done in Lincolnshire. And again, really vital area. Yes, it's an agricultural monoculture. There's nothing there to see, but we need to know that there's nothing there to see. So please go out and tramp those, flat lands. And then again, we've got, North and South Wales as well. And as I said, there's barriers to participation, so it's approaching landowners, but they're always too keen to help, in my experience. They want to know what butterflies they've got there as well. And then again, a nil return is just as important as millions of butterflies. And there's loads of opportunities to get involved. Look at that. There's loads. There's 857 available squares. And look at them all. Look. They're all in these under-recorded areas as well. There's no excuse. And look, 897. Woo. Let's get that number down. So I'm going to take you on a little trip. Oh, yes. One way we've decided to try and target some of these under-recorded areas is that upland areas are underrepresented in the wider countryside butterfly survey. Not many people live in upland areas either, so I appreciate it's quite difficult to get local volunteers to do these squares, but these areas are fantastic places to go on holiday. So I'm going to take you on a little trip, on a little holiday trip here. So here we are, these are the areas we've got holiday squares in. These are some of the under-recorded areas we've got holiday squares in. All of these blue squares are holiday squares. The website, I think, is up and running, ready now for people to log on to and have a look and take a, see what holiday squares are available in the regions where they're going on holiday to. So you can click on and sign up and it's yours for the year. And I'm going to take you to some of these lovely places. Look at this. Snowdonia. Here we go. Right, so, I don't know, can't remember the music for the holiday programme. Could have had some of that. Look at that. SH7942 in Snowdonia. Absolutely beautiful landscape. Yeah, it's a little bit grey. But the great thing about surveying the uplands is the temperature can be a little bit cooler. You don't have to stick to the standard butterfly recording numbers. And, even if it was, sunny weather, but they're a bit more hardcore, these butterflies in the uplands. So, a bit of sunshine, they'll be out skipping around, flapping about, and you can trot around through the rushes after them. And look at that, who knows, that could be a lovely holiday cottage as well. Just get away from it all. Then off we go, off to the North York Moors. There we go. You can trot up there, go and make friends with the sheep, and have a lovely walk across the moors. That square's available. This one is my particular favourite, and I think I might just run away up here. NT 1400 in Dumfries and Galloway. Absolutely lovely, look at that. I wonder if that little house is for sale or whether it wants a squatter. And then we've got this one. I've actually surveyed this square, as has Katie Cruikshanks. It's quite a long walk in, but it's really, really lovely. You go up a slope, which is quite steep, but it's really lovely. And you would get to the top there, and the views are absolutely fantastic. And who knows? I didn't see anything. Katie didn't see anything. But it's good exercise. It's out in the fresh air, health and well-being and all that business. And, and the views, incredible. And who knows, you might find something like a mountain ringlet up there. You could be the first one to put your flag in the ground up there. So, but again, even if you don't see a butterfly, it doesn't matter. It will be a lovely experience, it's a lovely walk, and the views are, priceless. But I don't know if I've managed to sell it to you yet. So now for the techie science bit. How good is the data that you guys collect for the Wider Countryside Butterfly Survey? Well, actually, it's pretty good, because David Roy and his colleagues wrote a paper back in 2014 now, ages ago, that shows that Wider Countryside Butterfly Survey data strongly correlates from that that's collected using the UK BMS traditional transect. So the trends are very similar. So reduced effort is good. So bearing this in mind, 3 years ago, we did some analysis on Wider Countryside Butterfly Survey data alone, no traditional transects. And we looked at data from 2009 to 2015, and it was this July and August visit data. Data from 1,652 Wider Countryside squares, and we had 27 species in the analysis, including 3 regular migrants. And what we did was we looked at the population growth rates for different species in different habitats and different regions. And then Emily Dennis, our statistician, fitted them to this. And this is terrifying. Don't know what that means. No idea what that means. But anyway, she fitted that equation, she did some stats, and here are the results. So, looking at the UK level results, you can see that the skippers, the fritillaries, and some of the browns were showing positive growth rates. So they were, positive trends and increasing in numbers. However, knickers, wrong way. However, the whites weren't doing too well at a UK level. Neither was Scotch Argus, Scotch Argus and Speckled Wood. Sorry, that's Speckled Wood and Small Heath. And neither was Scotch Argus. So those ones are showing negative trends. When you look at all the different regions across the UK, the main thing to pick up from here is that on the whole, most regions have about 50% of species that are stable. But let's delve into this a little bit deeper. So here we've got the northeast and the southwest. More species were declining in the northeast, and more species are increasing in the southwest. But in both regions there are similar trends. So again, the whites, small white, large white, green veined white, declining in both the northeast and in the southwest. But again, some of the brown species, ringlet meadow brown, gatekeeper, and again here ringlet meadow brown, marble white, increasing. So different regions, but similar trends. And we've just got a couple here. So these species, so we've got the silverwash fritillary, which wasn't in the analysis for the northeast, and the holly blue, both doing well in the southwest as well. And again, so we broke it down a bit more and looked at the different habitats. And again, arable farmland compared to broadleaf woodland, the whites suffering in both habitats, and the browns doing well in both habitats. So, if we look closer again at habitat and regional trends for the green-veined white, this is where it gets a little bit complicated, and I definitely need my notes. So you can see that there are significant declines in broadleaf woodland, arable, improved grassland, what's that one say, and urban and garden habitats for the green-veined white. But in moorlands, which is this bit here, the declines are significantly greater for this species in moorlands compared to urban areas and gardens. And then if we look at the regions, we can see that in all regions there are significant declines, but these declines are greater in Wales and the West Midlands compared to Scotland, which isn't quite as negative. And let's move on to the next one. So a species that's doing reasonably well is the Meadow Brown, and again this is increasing significantly in broadleaf woodlands. Oh, that's that one. Broadleaf woodlands and arable habitats and improved grasslands. So increases in growth rates there, and again when you look at the regions, there's regional differences. There's significant increases in all regions except in Scotland. Where is Scotland? Scotland's on the end there. There's no little star for Scotland. And the growth rate is greatest in Wales compared to all regions, again apart from for Scotland and the West Midlands. So, and now we'll look at a species, the comma butterfly. So the population is stable in all habitats apart from in broadleaf woodlands, where you can see there's a significant decline. And again, there's regional variations. So in northwest England, the species is increasing, and in southeast England, the species is decreasing. Oh, no, there's no highlights there. And basically what this shows is that the species is declining in its core area, its core area of the UK, but on the range margin it's actually increasing, and this is a pattern that's regularly seen with species that are increasing in their range margin. They actually decrease in their core. Yep, so there we are. So just to summarise, there is some positive news. 2/3 of species are stable or increasing. The browns, the fritillaries and the skippers are the main winners, and the whites have been the main losers. And these trends are generally similar in different habitats and regions, although the rates of change differ between habitats and regions. But again, it shows further evidence of declines for cooler adapted species, such as the Scotch Argus, and again, expanding species, such as the comma in their core range. So, we did all this research about 3 years ago, so it's a little bit out of date. So, my plan is, once this, if you've not heard, there's a moth atlas coming out. Once the moth atlas is done, my next job is to look at the wider countryside data again and look at the data from 2009 to 2018. So we'll have 10 years worth of data, so that would be a much more meaningful trend than 7 years worth. So redo the analysis. This was just a warm-up, and also we want to improve coverage of wider countryside butterfly survey squares over the next few years. So hopefully I've managed to sell the wider countryside to you. There's another thing that you can do as part of the wider countryside butterfly survey as well, and that is you can take part in the UK Pollinator Monitoring Scheme, POMS. So Butterfly Conservation is a partner in this project, and we want you to go out and do what they call fit counts. You're going to be quite fit if you've walked up all those mountains in Scotland, but it's not really related to that kind of fit. It's what you do is you basically count all the insects that land on the target flowers. We can give you a list of target flowers. You can go to the website. You count all the insects that land on the flowers in a 50 centimetre by 50 centimetre quadrat. You identify them to group level, so you don't have to be, an expert, entomologist. And again, there's guides provided for you, and you can do it anywhere. You can do it in your wider countryside square. You can do it in your garden. You can do it on your transect. Do it out on a countryside walk, absolutely everywhere and anywhere. And Claire Carvel will be talking to you more later on about all that stuff. And so get involved in that too. And that's about it from me. I'd just like to say thanks to all my colleagues and all the wider countryside butterfly survey champions and recorders out there that take part and contribute to the wider countryside butterfly survey. And as I said earlier, there is a moth atlas coming out later this year. There's pre-publication flyers at the back of the room, and the pre-publication offer has been extended to May 2019. So ignore what it says on here that it's the end of March. It's not, it's the end of May now. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Zoe.
Is that one? That's yours.
It's now my great pleasure to introduce our volunteer speaker this morning, Mike Slater. Mike is close to his local patch here, being a Warwickshire man. Mike does some incredible work, particularly around Wrightwood Meadows, but he's going to be speaking to us today about purple hairstreak monitoring. Over to you, Mike.
Well, thank you very much. What I hope to do today is, first of all, tell you how Warwickshire uses all its monitoring data. We monitor just under 100 sites in Warwickshire to actually produce annual trends of how the butterflies are doing against their 3, 10-year and all-time means. Like most of you organised in Transects, you'll find that canopy species aren't well covered by the current monitoring schemes. So what we've done in Warwickshire is devise certain methods that we can actually monitor these butterflies, and I'll be sharing those with you later, our possible solutions to those problems. And the first part of it really is, thankfully, I'm not great at tech, but I have people in the branch that are. So first warm thanks is to Keith Warmington, who annually downloads all the data from all our monitoring schemes in Warwickshire, and actually, basically, in simple terms, produces all the sites we monitor across the top and all the butterflies down that side. And if I take Ashthorne there for 77 brimstones, when I mean we compare the 3-year data, that was 2018's data, so we compare that result with the mean of 2017, 16 and 15. So that's how we do it. And thankfully, again, we've got another great techie person in Warwickshire called Rod Adams. And for every site we monitor, he gets that data and downloads it automatically into a spreadsheet, which automatically calculates the changes to the 3-year, the 10-year and the all-time means. Then comes my job. So I'm using the common blue as an example here. And this is, for statistical reasons, obviously, I take all the sites that recorded over 100 common blues. And you can see here for 2018, compared to their 3-year means, the common blue had a very good year. Most sites increased by over 100%. So that's great. But what I'll draw your attention to is these sites here that didn't quite do so well. Now, you won't know this probably, but all those sites are old sand and gravel sites, and they drain very freely with their water. When I looked at this, it sent up sort of warning signals to me. So I then looked at the performance of the second brood at all those sites on that chart, and it was noticeable that the sites in light green, their second brood didn't do so well. So again, this is early indications that the drought in 2018 affected the performance of the common blue. And it'd be very, very interesting to see what the situation is this year, especially at the sites in light green. Another example here is a small tortoiseshell. And again, you can see the small tortoiseshell's doing badly in Warwickshire, but so it's 9 and above. I took all those transects. And it doesn't seem that there's any correlation between how it did last year. So it might surprise you to know that I determined the fall in the small tortoiseshell last year was 30 to 60% from its 3-year mean, even though there's 4 squares there in green. Now again, it's interesting that you might not know this, but all those sites in green have a major river or watercourse running through them, the River Avon in many cases. We also know from surveys that the main breeding area for the small tortoiseshell is in the floodplains of these rivers. You know, it gets a notification from the agricultural runoff from the water that overflows. Also, those nettles throughout 2018 were in good condition. Elsewhere, lots of our transect walkers were saying that the nettles are all desiccated. It's not doing so well. So again, early indications that we think the small tortoiseshell was badly affected by the drought. Further evidence for this comes in these squares for Middleton and Wrighton Country Park. They haven't got a watercourse running through them, but they've got big lakes. And again, they've got nettles around these lakes where the small tortoiseshell breeds. So again, we think they didn't suffer as badly, but we think the drought has had a big effect on the small tortoiseshell. And the other way you can use this data is I've just grabbed a load of butterfly species and a load of transects to demonstrate this. But what I'll draw your attention to here is Coombe Abbey grasslands, and all their species against the 3-year mean is positive. Now again, you won't know this, but this transect was on a semi-improved grassland. That semi-improved grassland has been improved with green hay crops, wildflower mixes over the years, thanks to and we can feed these information back into the site owner and the transect walkers. Thank you very much. Your work to conserve your butterflies is working. Here is the evidence using butterflies as biological indicators. So you can have a really powerful message by feeding the results of transects back to walkers and site owners annually. Great things happen when the site owner or the transect walker comes back to us. And this is an example from RSPB Middleton. This is just a snapshot of feedback with the skippers, but what I'll draw your attention to is the Dingy Skipper. They approached us and said, we're worried about our Dingy Skipper. Though it's present on the site, we're not always recorded on the transects, and in some years we're only recording 1 or 2. We visited the site, and it quite became apparent to us that the site had been scrubbed up on the grasslands of sallow scrub coming in, and the abundance of common birdfoot trefoil, its food plant there, was actually quite low. Fantastically, RSPB will cure that. They cleared the scrub, they started to seed common birdfoot trefoil and increase the abundance, and you can see here what a rapid effect that has had in the increase for 2017, and that increase has continued to this day. So that's the power of our data if you feed it back to site owners. I'm now going to come on to talk about transects, because the normal methods don't work for these 4 species. Brown hairstreak, white letter hairstreak, purple hairstreak, purple emperor. Now we'd all love to see them like that as we walk around our transects, frequently, in their hundreds. Unfortunately, that's the shot you get. And you can see here, it's the purple emperor flying over its canopy area. It's the purple hairstreak at the top of an oak tree where you need binoculars to see it. And my favourite, the white letter hairstreak, always has this horrible thing of always facing you, so you have to skew round a hedgerow to try and get your binoculars on it to actually identify it's a white letter hairstreak. So the current methods don't really work. And you can see here in Warwickshire, this is all the transect feedback for 2018 from our woodlands. There's no obvious trend for the purple hairstreak in our woodlands if you just use the grounded purple hairstreaks. So what I did in 1990 is established a different type of monitoring for the purple hairstreak. And to try and keep all the parameters the same, I actually used 2 current transects. So you've got the Wrightwood transect in red and the Wrightwood North transect in blue. So I kept the same routes for monitoring the purple hairstreaks. Because as you can see, again, if you look at the grounded purple hairstreak data, there's no real semblance of what's it doing, how's it doing. So this is one of the sections at Wrightwood, and the idea is you walk down the ride looking up at the tops of the trees. Obviously you have to walk slightly slower, otherwise you'll break your leg. And also you may have to pause as you're going along just to make sure you've counted all the purple hairstreaks in each individual tree. And the important thing here is you don't just look at the tops of the oak trees, that's caterpillar food plant to the purple hairstreak. You don't just look also at the tops of the ash trees where all the books say they sort of perform. You have to look at every broadleaf tree along that particular ride, because that's the sort of list of trees I've recorded them sort of behaving on during these transects. And the witch elm down the bottom is a real challenge because you've got white letter hairstreaks there as well. So that's a test for observation. So, time of the year, when do you do it? Well, again, those are familiar with transect weeks. You normally start week 12 to 14, week 13 is a normal week, and that's the end of June. Now, I've only ever once probably started a week late, but now with social media where you see the Purple Hairstreak coming out in places like Hampshire, Sussex or wherever, that shouldn't really be an issue. You, again, try and keep it the same as a full transect, so you do one walk or one monitoring walk every 7 days. And you generally end week 21, 22, which is the end of August. Now the key here is, if I walk round all these transects and don't see a purple hairstreak or only see one, then really that's when I'll stop the walk. It's as simple as that. Time of day is key. Now I've seen purple hairstreaks very active in the trees between 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock in the evening, but I'd say the peak time is about 6:30 to 7:30. Now, again, it's great, you sort of start there. Whoops, wrong one. Well, the weather is also key. So again, it might surprise you, if it's too hot, the purple hairstreaks don't fly. So if you've had a baking hot July day with no clouds, they'll just sit on tops of the trees and not move. Fortunately, on my transect, I can park the car at one end, look at the trees and wait till they get active, because they need to cool down before they start getting active. They like cloudy conditions, but not dark clouds. Because again, if the dark clouds come over, I think they think it's going to rain, so they hunker down. Having said that, I've seen purple hairstreaks frequently flying in light drizzle and light rain. Any mothers out there, this is the time to do a purple hairstreak monitoring. They love the muggy conditions associated with like a key moth night. And not surprisingly, being at the tops of the tree, they don't like it too windy. So really there's no point doing a purple hairstreak monitoring walk if it's above 3 on the Beaufort scale. And that's some of the results you can get on the monitoring. You start to see big numbers. But the key for putting this slide up is there's some correlation between the Wrightwood North and the Wrightwood Transects. And if you want to see how it does, if you like, 3-year mean of 462 is the average for the last 3 years, 470 for the 10-year mean. So it's a pretty consistent numbers you've seen over the years. You might think from your observations, well, how did it do in 2018? Well, if you look there, I had a staggering 1,489. It was a phenomenal year last year, by far the best year ever of my recording. So again, just fits in with the figures. The other thing purple hairstreak monitoring gives you is a great opportunity to look at its behaviour. And these are just my field notes from 2018. And even in simple terms, you can see, wrong one. You can see in simple terms that this particular week, all the purple hairstreaks are on one side of the ride. By the next week, most of them are on the other side of the ride, just a few on that side. So that's a simple way of observing them. But actually what I'd say is, I've picked up probably these 5 basic behaviours of purple hairstreak. The first one is what you see early in the year, which I describe as an exploratory flight. You'll see a purple hairstreak, which looks like a silver disc, going up to the tops of the trees, having a bit of a look round, and then coming down in a zigzaggy type of jinking flight. The next type of flight, I would say, is a travel flight. And it's more purposeful. It's basically in a straight line. It flies on the same side of the ride from one tree to another, or across the ride in a straight line, and quite purposeful and quite fast. The third type of behaviour is what a combat flight. And I believe this to be 2 male purple hairstreaks. And again, it's wonderful. You see these 2 silver discs spinning round very, very rapidly, go up in the air, and the winner will come back to virtually the same spot it set off from, and the other one will scuttle off, which is why I think they're 2 males. The fourth type of behaviour is what I call a chase flight. And again, I believe this to be a female or females being chased by a number of males. And if anybody's ever sort of watched, say, grey squirrels in a woodland, where the female sets off and is pursued by several males, she goes up the trees, down the trees, across the boughs, all over the place in a rapid movements, and eventually the most fittest male gets his prize. Well, this is what happens in the chase flight, I think, with the purple hairstreak. But the great observation is when these chase flights come together. It's absolutely, truly spectacular. If you watch Blue Planet and you've seen these bait balls of sardines in the sea, it's like that. And all these sort of pursuit flights come together in a ball. And I've been lucky enough to see at least 3, which I can only estimate as being 500 purple hairstreaks, and 1 of 1,000. And the one, they go up, spinning round like this, and they go up in the sky, probably twice the height of the trees in the wood. On one occasion, they sort of hovered like, the old UFO films. And then, as a mass, they went out of the wood, presumably to colonise somewhere else. So, regards to purple hairstreak, I think it's a valid method. It does show you the population changes year on year. Gives you a great opportunity to observe the behaviour of purple hairstreaks, but like all things, it probably needs testing fully. I'm now going to come on to the white letter hairstreak. When I first started doing purple hairstreak monitoring, I also monitored a colony of white letter hairstreaks just near Wrightwood. It was in a lane. So I could walk down one side of the lane, looking at the trees to see the white letter hairstreaks, and then come down the other side, counting them on the other side, and I could see 30 to 40 white letter hairstreaks. Unfortunately, after 2 years, the elms caught Dutch elm disease, and the landowner cut all the elms down. So that was the end of the monitoring and the colony, though it did move nearby. So again, this needs further talk, further debate and further testing, but if I was recommending to you if you're going to do this, when you'd start, again, it's probably week 12 to 14, end of June time, but maybe a week or so earlier. Again, you do a walk every 7 days, and again, needs a bit more testing, but you generally end week 18 to 19, early part of August. Now, I've seen white letter hairstreaks at the top of elm trees, being active between 2 o'clock and 7 o'clock. I used to do the walk sometime between about 3:30 and 6 o'clock. In fact, most times it was between 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock, because that's just before I did my purple hairstreak monitoring. And I think, again, it just needs testing to actually say that method is valued. The third species I want to talk about is the brown hairstreak. And again, we know this is not covered well by normal transect methods. About 4 or 5 years ago, I can't remember exactly, Wareham sort of suggested to us we go to squares and do timed egg counts. And even in squares, we currently didn't know where the butterfly was to do these timed egg counts. And I wondered if we could use this method, just twist it slightly, to actually monitor where we manage sites, if the management works for the brown hairstreak. So, to give you an example, here is Wrightwood Meadows, the Butterfly Conservation Reserve, and this side here is just a 40-metre stretch of blackthorn scrub that goes from the ditch to the footpath. And we've made lots of these where we've actually divided them into 4-year rotations. Equally, we've planted a lot of hedgerow, and currently we're laying all these hedgerow, and we plan to again cut the hedges on a 4-year rotation, lay them, including removing the suckers from the various meadows to keep the Rural Payments Agency people happy. And again, just to show you that in a bit more detail, so this is the aerial shot of Wrighton. So that hedge there, for instance, has been divided into 4, that hedge there has been divided into 4, and those are the rotations for the hedges. We have 2 12-year woodland edge coppice regimes, and the one goes from about there all the way around to about there, and the second one goes all the way around there. And in front of those 12-year coppice cycles, there's 3 times 4-year scrub rotational coppices. And on each of those coppice management plots, we actually do a time count. But the key here is we're not looking to find every egg. You go to the best bit of that 4-year rotation, and you're just looking to see how many eggs you can find as quickly as possible on the best bits of blackthorn from your experience of looking for eggs. As the results, it's early days. Now, a couple of things I like about this method is, again, it seems to indicate the number of eggs are increasing, dangerous on just 2 years' data. You can see here we've started to add further plots for time counts because we've, in partnership with other organisations, Warwickshire County Council is place, we're actually monitoring and managing other areas of blackthorn nearby. But the thing I like, I don't know about anybody else, after about 2 hours of egg searching, my concentration levels go. So what I love about this is, and you can see by the dates and the times, I actually did this in 3 2-hour sessions. So I think this is a very doable way of monitoring brown hairstreaks. And you can see, when I talk about time counts, it's a 15-minute time count, it's a 30-minute time count, no more than that. And no, we're not finding hundreds of eggs. Now, initial findings are, I think this type of management is actually benefiting the brown hairstreak, certainly at Wrightwood. Other anecdotal evidence for this is, I've been monitoring this site since 1990. The first ever brown hairstreak adult I recorded on the Transect was 2017. I've found eggs all the time before that. I actually had 2 in 2018, which I was delighted about. So again, it's another indication that this management's working, and hopefully in future years, this sort of monitoring will help prove that in a better way. Final species we want to talk about is the Purple Emperor. And this is the typical pose of Purple Emperor, way up in its male congregation area. Now again, we wanted to see if we could actually monitor the Purple Emperors. So the idea is you stand at the congregation area for 5 to 10 minutes, but the key is long enough for you to determine that you've actually seen every male in the congregation area at that time you've stopped. That's the key. And again, you start it just before the end of June, when the males, that's obviously Warwickshire, it might differ elsewhere. You do a monitoring session every 7 days. But the great thing about this sort of monitoring, it's only for 3 or 4 weeks. So again, for volunteers, it's not a huge commitment, and I think it's very doable. And you tend to end, as I say, mid-July, when the males start to stop congregating. Time of day? Well, I've seen males at the congregation areas in Warwickshire between 1 o'clock and 7 o'clock at night. It's another species I quite frequently see when I'm monitoring my purple hairstreaks. But to be honest, I'd say the key times are between about 2 o'clock and 5 o'clock. And this is the sort of results you can get. So again, if you look up here, the average I've got for 3-year mean is 3, average for 10-year mean is 4. And you might say, how did it do in 2018? Well, not bad, 9. Huge increase. So again, it gives further evidence for the Purple Hair Emperor having a fantastic year last year. It's the best ever year. So I think, again, this method is valid, and I commend it to everybody. And finally, all our results, thanks to the efforts of people like Keith and Rob, allows us to sort of put out the trends for all our species found in Warwickshire, normally by the end of December, certainly early January. And if you want to know how we think the species did, you can always follow me on Twitter at MikeSlater5. I have been occasionally known to do the odd tweet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mike, for that exceptional example of fieldcraft and volunteer work at full pelt. An example for all of us. I think many of us would aim to do a tenth of what you do. I think that's great. Any quick questions? We have just a minute for the next talk. Okay. Oh, sorry, one at the back, yes?